The massive ship moved through space like a metal mountain. Its hull was dark gray and covered with weapons that could destroy entire cities. This was the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion, flagship of Admiral Vextara of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. For 3,000 years, ships like this one had brought fear to every corner of the galaxy. Admiral Vextara stood on the bridge, her tall frame covered in the black uniform of Imperial Command. Her skin was pale blue and her eyes were bright silver. She had conquered 43 different worlds in her career. Every species she had ever met had either surrendered quickly or been destroyed completely. There was never a third option. Today would be no different. "Admiral," called her communications officer, "we are detecting a large vessel approaching from the edge of the Orion Arm. It appears to be a colony ship of unknown design." Vextara turned toward the main display screen. A large ship appeared on the viewer. It was much smaller than her dreadnought, but still impressive in size. The design was strange to her eyes. Where Imperial ships were smooth and curved, this vessel was angular and practical. It looked like it was built by engineers who cared more about function than beauty. "Have we encountered this species before?" she asked. "No, Admiral. The ship's design does not match any known civilization in our database. They appear to be using basic fusion drives and primitive communication systems." Vextara smiled. "Another primitive species trying to expand beyond their home system. This would be easy." "Open a channel," she commanded. "Let us introduce them to Imperial law." On the alien ship, Captain Sarah Chun stood in the center of a much smaller bridge. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her uniform was dark blue with simple rank insignia. Around her, the crew worked at stations that looked practical rather than impressive. Everything on the human ship was built to work, not to intimidate. "Captain," said Lieutenant Commander Davis from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the large vessel. It's in an unknown language, but the computer is working on translation." "Put it through," Chun replied calmly. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and commanding. Even without understanding the words, everyone on the bridge could hear the threat and the tone. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenolinguist, worked quickly at her station. For months, she had been monitoring radio signals from this part of space. She had already begun learning the language of these aliens. Her fingers moved across her keyboard as she refined the translation protocols. "I've got it, Captain," she said. "They're demanding our immediate surrender. They say we have entered Imperial space without permission and must submit to their authority or be destroyed." Chun nodded slowly. She had expected this. During their long journey to this system, they had intercepted many transmissions. The pattern was always the same. This Zephyrian Empire would arrive, demand surrender, and then either enslave or eliminate any species they encountered. "Dr. Vasquez, please prepare a response in their language. Tell them we come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations." The doctor worked for several minutes, then nodded. "Ready, Captain." "Open the channel," Chun ordered. Her voice was calm and professional as she spoke. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the human colony ship New Horizon. We come in peace from the planet Earth. We wish to establish friendly relations with your empire and share knowledge for the benefit of both our peoples." On the Imperial bridge, Vextara listened to the translation with growing amusement. How many times had she heard similar words? Every species thought they could negotiate their way out of Imperial law. "They call themselves humans," reported the communications officer. "Their homeworld is listed as Earth in an unexplored region of the galaxy." "Standard response," Vextara commanded. "Inform them that they have 1 hour to prepare for surrender. All crew will be processed for Imperial service or disposal. Their technology will be analyzed and their ship will be added to the Imperial fleet." The message was transmitted. On the human ship, Dr. Vasquez translated quickly. "They're giving US 1 hour to surrender unconditionally," she reported. "They say our crew will be evaluated for usefulness and our ship will be taken." Captain Chun was quiet for a moment. Around her, the bridge crew waited. They all knew this might happen. They had prepared for it during their long journey. Dr. Vasquez, please send another message. Tell them we cannot accept their terms, but we remain open to peaceful negotiation. The response came back quickly. This time, Admiral Vexthara's voice was sharp with irritation. There will be no negotiation. You will surrender or you will be destroyed. This is Imperial law. You have 55 minutes remaining. Chun looked at her crew. Each of them nodded slightly. They understood what came next. Dr. Vasquez, please. Prepare one final message. The woman worked at her station, then looked up. Ready, Captain. Chun's voice was still calm, but now there was something else in it. Something that made Admiral Vexthara pause when she heard the translation. Admiral Vexthara of the Zephyrian Empire. This is Captain Sarah Chun. For the past several months, we have been monitoring your communications. We have studied your tactics and your technology. We know what you do to species that refuse to surrender. We know about the 47 worlds you have destroyed and the billions of people you have enslaved. We came here hoping to find a different path, but you have shown us that peaceful coexistence is not possible with your empire. On the Imperial Bridge, several officers looked uncomfortable. How had these primitives been monitoring their communications? Chun continued, We tried to do this the easy way, Admiral. You should have listened. Now it's too late. The transmission ended. Admiral Vexthara stared at the screen for a moment, then began to laugh. Did that primitive just threaten me? She asked her crew. One small ship against the might of the Imperial fleet? Her laughter stopped when the sensor officer called out urgently, Admiral! The human ship is moving. They're heading directly into the asteroid field of this system. Cowards! Vexthara spat. They think they can hide among the rocks. Very well. We will hunt them down and destroy them slowly. It will serve as a good lesson for the next species we encounter. She turned to her tactical officer. Deploy the fleet in a standard search pattern. Use the smaller ships to flush them out of the asteroids. This should not take long. But as the Imperial ships moved toward the asteroid field, strange things began to happen. Ships that should have had clear sensor readings instead showed confusing data. Asteroids that had been in certain positions were now elsewhere. Energy. Signatures appeared and disappeared without explanation. On the new horizon, Captain Chun stood in what had once been the main cargo bay. Now it had been converted into a command center filled with displays and communication equipment. Around her, colonists who had been farmers and teachers and engineers worked at stations that controlled weapons and sensors hidden throughout the asteroid field. Status report, she requested. Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez looked up from his station. All defensive platforms are online, Captain. The mining charges have been placed exactly where Dr. Wright calculated. The kinetic launchers are loaded and ready. Dr. James Wright, the colony's chief scientist, pointed to a display showing the positions of the Imperial ships. They're following standard Imperial hunting patterns, just like Dr. Vasquez predicted from the communications we intercepted. They'll move the smaller ships in first, trying to force us out into the open. Chun nodded. How long until they reach the first perimeter? 18 minutes, Captain. Chun activated the ship-wide communication system. Attention all colonists. This is Captain Chun. In 18 minutes, we will find out if all our preparation was worth it. Remember, we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for every species in this galaxy that refuses to kneel to the Empire. We are fighting for the right to exist as free people. Today we show the galaxy that the Empire can be stopped. In the asteroid field, Imperial scout ship Vengeance moved carefully between the floating rocks. Commander Kent had done this hundreds of times before. Find the hiding aliens, force them out, and watch them die. It was routine work. His sensors detected an energy signature from a large asteroid ahead, probably their ship trying to hide. He told his crew, "Move us in closer." The Vengeance approached the asteroid. Commander Kent was studying his sensors when the asteroid suddenly split open like a flower. Inside was not a hiding ship, but a weapon platform that had been carved directly into the rock. The last thing Commander Kent saw was a stream of metal projectiles moving faster than his ship could dodge. On the Imperial flagship, Admiral Vexthara watched her tactical display as the Vengeance simply disappeared from sensors. "What happened to Scout Ship Vengeance?" she demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. They were investigating an energy signature and then ... nothing, no distress signal, no debris field. They're just gone." For the first time in her long career, Admiral Vexthara felt something she had not experienced in decades. Uncertainty. Send in 2 more scouts. Keep them together and maintain constant communication. The 2 scout ships moved into the asteroid field. They lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds before they too vanished from sensors. "Admiral," her tactical officer said quietly, "we're not hunting prey. We're being hunted." Vexthara's silver eyes narrowed as she stared at the asteroid field. Somewhere in there, the humans were waiting. For the first time since she had commanded a ship, she was facing an enemy that refused to play by the rules she understood. "Bring the fleet to full alert," she ordered. "And send a message to Imperial Command. Tell them we may need reinforcements." In the hidden command center, Captain Chun watched the Imperial fleet hesitate at the edge of the asteroid field. Dr. Vasquez monitored their communications and reported that they were calling for backup. "Good," Chun said quietly. "Let them bring more ships. We have plenty of asteroids." Admiral Vexthara paced the bridge of her flagship like a caged predator. 3 days had passed since the humans had vanished into the asteroid field. 3 days since she had lost 5 scout ships without explanation. 3 days of failure that threatened everything she believed about Imperial superiority. "Status report," she commanded for the 100th time. Commander Zechtil, her second-in-command, looked uncomfortable. "Still no contact with any of the scout teams, Admiral." "Our long-range sensors show movement within the asteroid field, but we cannot get clear readings. Something is interfering with our equipment." Vexthara stopped pacing and stared at the main display. The asteroid field stretched across millions of kilometers. Thousands of rocks floated in complex patterns around the system's star. She had dealt with hiding enemies before, but never like this. "Have we received word from Imperial Command about our reinforcement request?" "Yes, Admiral. Fleet Commander Drakethul is bringing 2 additional battle groups. They will arrive in 6 days. 6 days. Vexthara's reputation could not survive 6 days of doing nothing while primitive aliens made fools of the Imperial Navy. She had to act. "Prepare the Hammer Squadron for asteroid clearing operations. We will simply destroy every rock in that field until we find them." Commander Zechtil hesitated. "Admiral, that operation would take weeks to complete. The ammunition expenditure alone would be enormous." "I don't care about ammunition costs. I care about results. Begin the bombardment in 1 hour." Deep within the asteroid field, Dr. Elena Vasquez sat at her communication station listening to Imperial transmissions. Her understanding of their language had improved greatly over the past few days. She could now understand almost everything they said. "Captain," she called to Sarah Chun, "they're planning to start destroying asteroids." "Large-scale bombardment beginning in 1 hour," Chun nodded calmly. She stood in the center of their hidden command post, which had been carved out of a massive asteroid over the past 2 months. Around her, screens showed the positions of every Imperial ship and every human weapons platform hidden throughout the field. "Expected timeline?" Chun asked. Dr. James Wright looked up from his calculations. "At their current rate of fire, it would take them approximately 18 days to clear the entire field. But that assumes they can maintain that pace without interruption." Chun smiled slightly. "And we're not going to let them work without interruption, are we?" Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez grinned from his station. "Definitely not, Captain. We have some surprises ready for them." The bombardment began exactly 1 hour later. Imperial destroyers moved to the edge of the asteroid field and began firing plasma cannons at the largest rocks. Each shot could vaporize a small mountain. Asteroids exploded in brilliant flashes of light and superheated debris. Admiral Vexthara watched the destruction with satisfaction. Maintain steady fire. I want this field cleared section by section. For 2 hours, the bombardment continued without incident. Hundreds of asteroids were destroyed. Imperial crews began to relax. This was the kind of warfare they understood. Simple, direct, overwhelming force applied. Until the enemy was eliminated, then the asteroids began to fire back. The first Imperial destroyer to die was the Crushing Fist. Its captain, Commander Veltar, was watching another asteroid explode when his sensor officer screamed the warning. 3 large rocks were moving directly toward his ship at impossible speed. Evasive maneuvers, Veltar shouted, but it was too late. The asteroids were not asteroids at all. They were human kinetic weapons disguised to look like floating rocks. Each one was a solid block of metal and stone accelerated to tremendous velocity by hidden railguns. When they hit the Crushing Fist, the destroyer simply ceased to exist. Before Admiral Vexthara could react to the loss of one ship, 2 more destroyers reported incoming kinetic projectiles. The Imperial ships tried to dodge, but the human weapons had been perfectly aimed. 2 more destroyers died in explosions of twisted metal and escaping atmosphere. All ships emergency withdrawal, Vexthara commanded. Pull back to minimum safe distance. The surviving Imperial ships retreated quickly from the asteroid field. Admiral Vexthara stared at her tactical display in shock. She had lost 3 destroyers in less than 5 minutes. The humans had somehow turned ordinary asteroids into weapons. How is this possible? She asked Commander Zechtal. Unknown, Admiral. Our sensors showed only normal asteroids until the moment they fired. The humans must have some form of advanced camouflage technology. Vexthara's mind raced. Advanced camouflage was not something primitives should possess. These humans were proving to be far more dangerous than any species the Empire had encountered. Before in the Human Command Center, Captain Chen watched the Imperial retreat with grim satisfaction. The kinetic asteroid launchers had worked exactly as planned. Dr. Wright's calculations had been perfect, and Engineer Rodriguez's construction crews had outdone themselves. Damage assessment? Chun asked. All weapon platforms remain intact. Rodriguez reported. The camouflage systems worked perfectly. The Empire still has no idea how many weapons we have hidden out here. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her communication station. Captain, I'm intercepting transmissions between Admiral Vexthara and her fleet commanders. They're confused and angry. This is the first time any of them have lost ships to a primitive species. Good. Chun replied. Confusion and anger lead to mistakes. What are they planning next? They're calling for specialized scanning equipment from their reinforcement fleet. They want to identify every weapon platform we have before they make another attack. Chun considered this information. The humans had always known that eventually the Empire would adapt to their tactics. The key was to stay one step ahead. Dr. Wright, how long until the next phase is ready? The scientist checked his displays. The mobile platforms are ready now, Captain. We can begin hunter-killer operations whenever you give the order. Chun nodded. Phase 1 had been about defense and demonstrating that humans could not be easily destroyed. Phase 2 would be about going on the attack. Begin Phase 2. Let's teach the Empire what it means to be hunted. Admiral Vexthara did not sleep that night. She stood in her private quarters staring out at the asteroid field, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. In 3 days, she had lost 8 ships without destroying a single human vessel. Her reputation was in ruins. A communication alert sounded. Commander Zechtal's voice came through the speaker. Admiral, urgent report from Perimeter Patrol. Destroyer Relentless has missed its scheduled check-in. Vexthara activated her communication unit. When was their last contact? 2 hours ago, Admiral. They were investigating unusual energy readings near the outer system. Send 2 ships to their last known position. Maintain constant communication. Already dispatched, Admiral. Vexthara returned to staring at the asteroid field. The humans were no longer content to hide and defend. Now they were actively hunting Imperial ships, the 2 search vessels found. The wreckage of the Relentless floating in empty space. The destroyer had been completely gutted by some kind of internal explosion. There were no survivors and no clues about what had caused the destruction. "Admiral," reported the search team leader, "the damage patterns are unlike anything we've seen before. It appears the ship was destroyed from the inside out." Vexthara felt a chill run down her spine. "Inside out? How's that possible?" "Unknown. Admiral, we're bringing back debris for analysis." What the Imperial search team did not know was that they were being watched. A small human stealth probe observed their every move and transmitted the data back to the asteroid field. The humans now had detailed information about Imperial search and rescue procedures. Captain Chun studied the intelligence reports with her senior staff. The mobile attack platforms were exceeding all expectations. Small human ships, disguised as debris or asteroids, could approach Imperial vessels undetected and deliver devastating attacks. "How many mobile platforms are operational?" Chun asked. Engineer. Rodriguez consulted his lists. 15 hunter-killer units are ready for deployment. Each one can take out a destroyer-class vessel or smaller. For larger ships, we'll need to coordinate multiple units. Excellent. Dr. Vasquez, what is the Empire's current emotional state? The linguist had been monitoring Imperial communications around the clock. "They're frightened, Captain." "Admiral, Vexthara is under tremendous pressure from her superiors. The crew morale is dropping rapidly. They've never faced an enemy they couldn't understand or predict." "Fear is a weapon," Chun observed. "But we must be careful not to let them panic completely. A panicked enemy might do something desperate." "Doctor." Wright agreed. "The Empire has planet-killing weapons, Captain. If they become convinced they cannot win through conventional means, they might resort to extreme measures." Chun had considered this possibility many times. The Empire's willingness to destroy entire worlds was well documented in the transmissions they had intercepted. But the humans had a plan for that too. "Continue the harassment operations," she decided, "but avoid destroying any capital ships. For now, we want them frustrated and off balance, not desperate." Over the next 3 days, Admiral Vexthara lost 4 more ships to the mysterious human attackers. Each time, Imperial vessels simply disappeared or were found destroyed with no explanation. The humans seemed able to strike anywhere in the system without warning. The Admiral's bridge crew was on edge. Every sensor contact was treated as a potential threat. Every unusual reading triggered emergency alerts. The mighty Imperial fleet was jumping at shadows. "Admiral," Commander Zektal reported during the morning briefing, "Fleet Commander Drakethel will arrive with reinforcements tomorrow. He's bringing 2 dreadnoughts and 8 heavy cruisers." Vexthara nodded grimly. "Good, perhaps superior. Numbers will allow us to finally corner these humans." What she did not know was that the humans had been preparing for reinforcements since before the first battle began. Dr. Wright and his teams had spent months converting asteroids into weapons platforms. They had enough hidden firepower to engage a fleet 10 times the size of what was coming. In the human command center, Captain Chun reviewed the final preparations for the next phase of their defense. Phase 2 had been about demonstrating human offensive capabilities. Phase 3 would be about showing the Empire that numbers alone could not guarantee victory. "Status report on the new arrivals?" she asked. Dr. Vasquez had been tracking the incoming Imperial fleet for hours. 2 Dominator-class dreadnoughts, 8 Conquest-class heavy cruisers, and 16 destroyer escorts. Total enemy fleet strength will be 26 capital ships plus support vessels. Estimated firepower? Dr. Wright had studied captured Imperial technical data extensively. Each dreadnought can level a continent. The heavy cruisers can destroy large cities. Combined, they have enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface. Chun remained calm despite the overwhelming odds. "And our capabilities?" Engineer Rodriguez smiled confidently. "We have 47 major weapon platforms, 15 mobile attack units, and enough kinetic projectiles to engage every ship in their fleet simultaneously. Then let's give them a welcome they'll never forget." The reinforcement fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Fleet Commander Drakethul was an ancient Zephyrian warrior who had conquered more worlds than any living Imperial officer. He took one look at Admiral Vexthara's situation reports and decided that overwhelming force was the only solution. "We will advance in full battle formation," he declared. "No more careful probing or small unit tactics. We will enter that asteroid field with our entire fleet and destroy everything we find." Admiral Vexthara felt relieved to have the responsibility taken from her shoulders. Fleet Commander Drakethul was a legend. If anyone could defeat these troublesome humans, it would be him. Neither Imperial commander realized that their massive fleet advance was exactly what the humans had been hoping for. Captain Chin watched the Imperial formation approach on her tactical displays and smiled grimly. "All weapons platforms prepare for simultaneous engagement. This is going to be the largest space battle in human history, and we're going to win it." Fleet Commander Drakethul stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Wrath, watching the asteroid field grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, 25 other warships moved in perfect formation. This was the largest Imperial fleet, assembled in over 50 years. Nothing in the galaxy could stand against such power. "All ships report ready for battle," announced his communications officer. Drakethul nodded with satisfaction. He was 800 years old and had never lost a battle. These humans would learn the same lesson as every other species that dared to challenge the Empire. Resistance was futile. "Begin the advance, all weapons charged and ready. I want overwhelming firepower on any target we encounter." The massive fleet entered the asteroid field like a metal storm. Their sensors swept ahead, searching for any sign of human activity. Energy shields glowed around each ship, ready to deflect any attack. Admiral Vexthara stood beside the fleet commander, watching nervously. She had seen what these humans could do. They were not like other enemies the Empire had faced. "Fleet Commander," she said carefully, "the humans have shown unusual tactical abilities. Perhaps we should proceed with more caution." Drakethul's ancient eyes flashed with irritation. "Admiral, I have conquered 47 worlds. I know how to deal with primitives who think they can hide among rocks. Watch and learn." Deep in the asteroid field, Captain Chun observed the Imperial advance from her command center. Every human weapon platform was tracking the enemy fleet. Months of preparation were about to be tested against the full might of the Zephyrian Empire. "All stations report ready," announced Chief Engineer Rodriguez. Dr. Wright studied his tactical displays. "The Imperial formation is exactly what we predicted. They're moving in a standard conquest pattern with the dreadnoughts in the center, and smaller ships spread in a protective screen." Dr. Vasquez monitored Imperial communications. "They're confident, Captain. Fleet Commander Drakethul is telling his captains that this will be a simple cleanup operation." Chun smiled grimly. "Then they're about to learn something new about humans. Begin Phase 3. All weapon platforms engage on my mark." The first indication that something was wrong came when Destroyer Pack Leader simply vanished from Imperial sensors. One moment it was there, scanning a cluster of asteroids. The next moment, empty space. "Report," demanded Fleet Commander Drakethul. "Unknown, sir." The pack leader was investigating unusual energy readings when it disappeared. No distress signal, no debris. Drakethul frowned. One ship was not important, but the manner of its disappearance was troubling. Continue the advance. Deploy fighters for close reconnaissance. 30 Imperial fighter craft launched from the carrier Domination. They spread out in a wide search pattern, their small size allowing them to navigate between asteroids more easily than the larger ships. The fighters lasted exactly 4 minutes. Hidden weapon platforms throughout the asteroid field opened fire simultaneously. Streams of metal projectiles, moving at tremendous velocity, cut through the fighter formation like invisible blades. The small craft had no warning and no chance to evade. "All fighters down?" reported the tactical officer. "Something is shooting at us from multiple directions." Fleet Commander Drakethul stared at his tactical display in shock. 30 fighters destroyed in minutes without the enemy revealing their positions. This was impossible. "Deploy additional reconnaissance drones. I want to know where these weapons are hiding. 100 small drones launched from various ships and spread throughout the asteroid field. Their sensors were set to maximum sensitivity. Searching for any sign of artificial structures, the drones found exactly what the humans wanted them to. "Find, sir," called the sensor officer. "We're detecting multiple artificial structures built into the asteroids. They appear to be weapon platforms of some kind." "How many?" Drakethul demanded. "Counting now, sir. 10 15 20-5 . Sir, I'm reading over 40 separate installations." Drakethul felt a chill of unease. 40 weapon platforms was more than some planetary defense systems. How had primitives built so much in such a short time? "All ships, target the nearest weapon." "Platforms, full bombardment?" The Imperial fleet opened fire with devastating effect. Plasma cannons and particle beams struck the asteroids that contained human weapons. Several installations were completely destroyed in brilliant explosions. In the human command center, Captain Chun watched her tactical display as red indicators marked the destruction of weapon platforms. "Casualties?" she asked calmly. "Engineer." Rodriguez checked his status boards. 7 platforms destroyed, 3 damaged but still operational. "All crew evacuated before the bombardment as planned," Chun nodded. The loss of weapon platforms had been expected. The humans had built far more than they actually needed, specifically for this situation. Continue the engagement. Phase 3 Alpha. Across the asteroid field, the remaining human weapon platforms opened fire in a coordinated barrage. But this time, they were not aiming at the Imperial fighters or destroyers. Every shot was targeted at the 2 massive dreadnoughts in the center of the enemy formation. Fleet Commander Drakethul watched in amazement as hundreds of kinetic projectiles converged on his flagship. The Imperial Wrath's energy shields flared to maximum power, deflecting most of the incoming fire. But some projectiles got through, causing minor damage to the hull. "Status report," he demanded. "Shields holding at 60%, reported his damage control officer. "Minor hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. No critical systems damaged." Drakethul allowed himself a moment of relief. The human weapons were impressive, but they could not penetrate Imperial shield technology. This battle was still winnable. That was when the asteroids began to move. What the Imperial fleet had assumed were large, harmless rocks suddenly activated hidden engines. Dozens of asteroids, each the size of a small moon, began accelerating toward the Imperial ships. "Evasive maneuvers," shouted Drakethul. "All ships, emergency scatter pattern." But capital ships were not designed for quick maneuvering. The massive vessels tried to change course, but they were too slow. The weaponized asteroids crashed into the Imperial formation like enormous hammers. The heavy cruiser Eternal Conquest took a direct hit from an asteroid moving at several kilometers per second. The ship's shields overloaded instantly, and the hull crumpled like paper. The cruiser broke apart in a shower of metal, and escaping atmosphere. 2 destroyers were caught between converging asteroids and were simply crushed. Another heavy cruiser lost its main engines when an asteroid clipped its stern section. In less than 10 minutes. The mighty Imperial fleet had lost 4 ships and suffered heavy damage to 6 others. Fleet Commander Drakethul could not believe what was happening. "How are they controlling those asteroids?" he demanded. His science officer worked frantically at his station. "Unknown, sir. We're detecting massive energy signatures from throughout the field. They appear to have engines hidden inside the rocks." "Engines? How is that possible?" Captain Chun watched the battle unfold with fierce satisfaction. The mobile asteroid weapons were performing perfectly. Dr. Wright's team had spent months hollowing out large rocks and installing fusion engines inside them. From the outside, they looked like ordinary asteroids, but they were actually massive kinetic weapons that could be guided to their targets. "Status of the Imperial fleet?" she asked. Dr. Vasquez monitored enemy communications. 4 ships destroyed, 6 heavily damaged. "Fleet Commander Drakethul is calling for withdrawal." "Not yet," Chun replied. Phase 3 Beta, deploy the hunter-killer units. Throughout the asteroid field, 15 small human ships that had been hiding among the debris suddenly activated their engines. Each one was no larger than an Imperial fighter, but they carried weapons specifically designed to penetrate Imperial shields. The hunter-killer units moved with incredible speed and agility, weaving between asteroids and avoiding Imperial fire. Their targets were the damaged enemy ships that were trying to withdraw from the battle. The first to die was the heavy cruiser Painbringer, which had lost half its shield generators to asteroid impacts. A human hunter-killer unit approached from behind and fired a concentrated beam of exotic particles directly into the ship's engine compartment. The cruiser exploded from within as its fusion reactors went critical. 2 more damaged destroyers fell to similar attacks before Fleet Commander Drakethul could organize a defense. All remaining ships, full retreat. He ordered, emergency jump to hyperspace. But the humans had prepared for this too. Throughout the asteroid field, hidden transmitters activated powerful jamming signals that interfered with Imperial navigation systems. The enemy ships found themselves unable to calculate safe hyperspace jumps. "Sir," reported the navigation officer, "our jump computers are being jammed. We cannot engage hyperspace drives safely." Drakethul realized with growing horror that he was trapped. The humans had turned the entire asteroid field into a cage, and his fleet was caught inside it. "Then we fight our way out," he declared. "All ships, maximum firepower, destroy everything in our path." The Imperial fleet began a desperate running battle toward the edge of the asteroid field. Human weapon platforms continued to fire from hidden positions. While mobile asteroids and hunter-killer units harassed the retreating ships, the battle raged for 6 hours. When it was finally over, Fleet Commander Drakethul's mighty armada had been reduced to 11 ships. 15 Imperial vessels had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships limped away from the asteroid field with heavy damage and traumatized crews. Admiral Vexthara stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the tactical display that showed the locations of destroyed Imperial ships. In all her years of service, she had never seen such a devastating defeat. "Fleet Commander," she said quietly, "what do we tell Imperial Command?" Drakethul was silent for a long moment. His ancient pride had been shattered by these impossible humans. Everything he thought he knew about warfare had been proven wrong. "We tell them the truth," he finally replied. "We tell them that we have encountered an enemy unlike any in our 3,000 years of conquest. We tell them that these humans are not primitives. They are warriors who fight with intelligence and tactics we have never seen before." He paused, looking at the asteroid field that had become a graveyard for Imperial ships. "And we tell them that if the Empire wants to defeat these humans, we will need every ship in the fleet." In the Human Command Center, Captain Chun received damage reports from across the asteroid field. The cost of victory had been high. They had lost 18 weapon platforms and 3 hunter-killer units. But they had proven something that no species in the galaxy had ever proven before. The Zephyrian Empire could be defeated. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez reported, "I'm intercepting emergency transmissions from the Imperial survivors. They're requesting immediate evacuation and medical support." Chun considered this information. The human victory would mean nothing if word of it did not spread. The galaxy needed to know that the Empire was not invincible. "Dr. Vasquez, please prepare a message for broadcast on all Imperial communication frequencies. Make sure every ship and every world in the Empire receives it." The linguist prepared the transmission equipment. "Ready, Captain." Chun's voice was calm but carried the weight of authority as she spoke. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Force. Today, the Zephyrian Empire suffered its first major military defeat in 3,000 years. 15 Imperial warships have been destroyed. The mighty Fleet Commander Drakethul has been forced to retreat." She paused, knowing that her words were being heard across the galaxy. "To the people of the Empire who live under Zephyrian rule, know this: the Empire is not invincible. They can be defeated, they can be stopped. Today is proof that freedom is possible." The message was transmitted across hundreds of star systems. In the weeks that followed, the news of the Imperial defeat spread like wildfire. Species that had been enslaved for generations began to hope for the first time in centuries. The human victory at the asteroid field was more than just a military success. It was the beginning of a galactic revolution. Supreme Commander Thexfer stood in the center of the Imperial War, council chamber on the capital world of Zephyr Prime. Around him, holographic displays showed star charts marking every world in the Empire. Red lights blinked on 17 different systems, indicating active rebellions. The news from the asteroid field had been worse than anyone could have imagined. Not only had Fleet Commander Drakethul been defeated, but the humans had broadcast their victory across the entire galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for generations were now rising up against Imperial rule. A report on the current rebellions. Thexfer commanded, General Caxthul, his chief military advisor, activated a display showing the troubled systems. The Altarian system has expelled all Imperial forces. The vegan colonies have declared independence. 3 other systems have gone completely silent and are not responding to Imperial communications. Thexver's forearms tensed with anger. He was the most powerful being in the galaxy, ruler of over 800 worlds. No primitive species should be able to threaten his empire. What are our intelligence reports on these humans? Limited, Supreme Commander? All we know is that they originated from a world called Earth in an unexplored region of space. They appeared to have highly advanced military technology despite their recent entry into interstellar travel. How is that possible? General Caxthul hesitated before answering, "Unknown, sir. Their weapons and tactics are unlike anything we have encountered before. They seem to specialize in turning defensive positions into offensive weapons." Thexfer studied the star charts for several minutes. The Empire had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. That fear was now cracking, and it was all because of one human colony ship. "Prepare the Annihilation Fleet," he finally decided. "We will go to this Earth and destroy the source of the rebellion. Once the humans are eliminated, the other species will remember their place." The Annihilation Fleet was the Empire's ultimate weapon. 1,000 warships, including 10 planet-killer dreadnoughts. It had never been deployed against a single world before. Usually, the threat of its existence was enough to keep troublesome species in line. "Supreme Commander," General Caxthul said carefully, "using the entire Annihilation Fleet against one primitive world might be seen as excessive." Thexver's eyes blazed with fury. "Excessive? These humans have cost us 15 warships and inspired rebellions across 17 systems. They have made the Empire look weak. I will show the galaxy what happens to anyone who challenges Zephyrian rule." 6 months later, Captain Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of the Human Orbital Defense Station Unity 1, below her. Earth sparkled like a blue jewel against the darkness of space. Around the planet, construction crews worked around the clock building defenses that would have been impossible. Just a year ago, the victory at the asteroid field had changed everything. The knowledge gained from captured Imperial technology had accelerated human scientific progress by decades. Earth now bristled with weapons that combined human engineering with alien science. "Status report," Chun requested. Commander Davis, who had been promoted after their victory, consulted his datapad. 200 orbital weapons platforms are operational. The planetary shield generators are at full power. All ground-based defenses are ready. Dr. Wright approached with the latest intelligence report. "Captain, our long-range sensors have detected the Imperial fleet. It's massive. Over 1,000 ships, including some vessel types we've never seen before." Chun nodded calmly. The humans had known this was coming. Earth's radio telescopes had detected the Imperial buildup months ago. Every human on the planet had been preparing for this moment. How long until they arrive? 18 hours at their current speed. Chun activated the planetary communication system. "Attention all citizens of Earth, this is Captain Chun speaking. From Unity 1, the Imperial fleet will arrive tomorrow. I know many of you are afraid. I know some of you think we cannot win against such overwhelming odds, but I want you to remember something important. Her voice carried to every human settlement on the planet and every defense station in orbit. 6 months ago, we were just colonists trying to find a new home. Today, we are the spark that has ignited rebellion across the galaxy. We are not fighting just for ourselves. We are fighting for every species that has ever dreamed of freedom. We are fighting to prove that tyranny can be defeated by people who refuse to surrender. She paused, looking down at the planet that had given birth to humanity. The Empire thinks they can frighten us with numbers. They think their 1,000 ships can break our spirit? They're wrong. Tomorrow we show them what humans are truly capable of when we fight for something we believe in. The transmission ended, but across Earth, people continued their preparations. In underground bunkers, families said goodbye to loved ones. In orbital factories, workers completed the final weapons that would defend their world. In military command centers, officers reviewed battle plans that had been months in the making. The Imperial Annihilation Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly on schedule. Supreme Commander Thexver stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, the Galaxy Crusher, studying the primitive world that had caused so much trouble. Initial sensor sweep complete, reported his tactical officer. The planet has approximately 8 billion inhabitants. We're detecting multiple orbital installations and what appears to be a planetary defense grid. Thexver was not impressed. How many orbital platforms? Approximately 200, Supreme Commander. Significant compared to most primitive worlds, but nothing that can threaten this fleet. Good. Begin the advance. I want this world reduced to ash within 6 hours. The 1,000-ship fleet moved toward Earth like a metal plague. Each vessel was larger and more powerful than anything the humans had ever built. Their combined firepower could sterilize the surface of a planet in minutes, but as the Imperial fleet approached, strange things began to happen. Ships on the outer edge of the formation started reporting system malfunctions. Navigation computers gave conflicting readings. Weapons targeting systems showed random errors. What is causing these technical difficulties? Thexver demanded. His science officer worked frantically at his station. Unknown, Supreme Commander. We're detecting some kind of interference, but we cannot identify the source. What the Imperials did not know was that Earth's defense included more than just weapons. Dr. Wright's teams had developed electronic warfare systems based on captured Imperial technology. Invisible signals were flooding Imperial ships with false data and disrupting their computer systems. Deploy fighter squadrons for reconnaissance, Thexver ordered. I want to know what kind of defenses these humans have prepared. 500 Imperial fighters launched from carrier ships and raced toward Earth. They moved in perfect formation, ready to sweep aside any primitive opposition. The fighters never reached the planet. As they approached Earth's outer defense perimeter, space around them suddenly filled with kinetic projectiles. Hidden weapon platforms, disguised as asteroids and space debris, opened fire simultaneously. The Imperial fighters, designed to fight other fighters and light ships, had no defense against the massive railguns that the humans had built. In less than 10 minutes, the entire fighter force was destroyed. Not a single human weapon platform was revealed by the attack. Report! Thexver shouted. All fighters destroyed, Supreme Commander? We're unable to determine the source of the attack. The humans appear to have weapons platforms throughout the outer system. Thexver felt a familiar chill of unease. These humans fought like no species the Empire had ever encountered. They turned empty space into a weapon. All ships advance to medium range and begin bombardment of the planet. Use the planet killer dreadnoughts. The massive fleet moved closer to Earth. The 10 largest ships in the formation were mobile weapons capable of destroying entire worlds. Each one carried enough firepower to crack a planet's surface and boil away its oceans. The dreadnoughts charged their primary weapons and prepared to fire at Earth, but before they could shoot, the planet itself seemed to come alive. What the Imperials had assumed was a normal planetary defense grid was actually something far more sophisticated. Earth was surrounded by hundreds of massive orbital mirrors, each one the size of a city. When the mirrors activated, they focused the energy of Earth's sun into concentrated beams of destruction. The first planet-killer dreadnought to die was the World Ender, a beam of focused solar energy, hotter than the surface of a star, struck the massive ship directly. The dreadnought's shields lasted exactly 3 seconds before failing. The ship's hull melted like ice in a furnace. 2 more dreadnoughts suffered the same fate before the Imperial fleet could react. The humans had turned their own star into a weapon. Evasive maneuvers, Dexver commanded. Scatter formation, avoid the energy beams. But the solar mirrors could track targets across millions of kilometers. As Imperial ships tried to dodge, more beams lanced out from Earth's orbital. Defenses, cruisers, and destroyers were vaporized instantly. Even the largest Imperial ships could not survive direct hits from weapons powered by a star. Supreme Commander Thexfer watched in horror as his invincible fleet was systematically destroyed. In 30 minutes he had lost over 200 ships, to an enemy he could barely see. "Sir," his communications officer called out urgently. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet. Put it through," Thexfer replied grimly. Captain Chin's voice filled the bridge of the Galaxy Crusher. "Supreme Commander Thexfer of the Zephyrian Empire. This is Captain Sarah Chun of Earth Defense Command. Your fleet is currently being destroyed by automated defense systems. You have lost over 200 ships and the number is rising every minute." Thexver said nothing, staring at his tactical display as more red indicators marked the destruction of Imperial vessels. Chun continued, "I am offering you one chance to withdraw your remaining forces. Leave the system immediately, and never return. If you refuse, we will continue destroying your ships until none remain." The Supreme Commander's 4 fists clenched with rage. No primitive had ever spoken to him with such confidence. No species had ever offered him terms instead of begging for mercy. "Human," he replied coldly, "you may have clever weapons, but you cannot defeat the entire Imperial fleet. We still outnumber your defenses by hundreds to 1. "Do we?" Chun asked calmly. That was when the second phase of Earth's defenses activated. Throughout the solar system, objects that had appeared to be moons, asteroids, and space debris suddenly revealed themselves as massive weapon platforms. Earth's defense grid was not limited to the planet's orbit. It extended throughout the entire solar system. The humans had spent months preparing for this battle. They had turned every piece of space rock larger than a building into a potential weapon. The Empire's 1,000-ship fleet found itself surrounded by thousands of hidden gun emplacements. The slaughter that followed was unlike anything in the history of galactic warfare. Imperial ships were caught in crossfire from multiple directions. Their weapons, designed for ship-to-ship combat, were almost useless against targets hidden inside solid rock. Within 2 hours, Supreme Commander Vexver's mighty Annihilation fleet had been reduced to fewer than 300 operational ships. The remainder were either destroyed or so heavily damaged they could barely move. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with a trembling voice, "we have to withdraw. We cannot win this battle." Vexver stared at Earth through the main view screen. The blue planet hung peacefully in space, showing no signs of the devastation it had inflicted on his fleet. These humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress that could destroy the largest fleet in galactic history. "Prepare for emergency hyperspace jump," he ordered quietly. "All remaining ships, immediate retreat." As the surviving Imperial ships fled Earth's solar system, Captain Chun stood in her command center watching their retreat. The cost of victory had been high. Earth's defenses had been damaged and many orbital platforms destroyed. But they had achieved something no species in the galaxy thought possible. They had defeated the Empire's ultimate weapon. "Dr. Vasquez," Chun said, "prepare another message for galactic broadcast. Make sure every world in the Empire receives it." When the transmission began, Chun's voice carried a tone of quiet authority that reached across the stars. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of Earth. Today, the Zephyrian Empire's Annihilation fleet was defeated in our solar system. Over 700 Imperial warships have been destroyed. Supreme Commander Thexver himself has been forced to retreat. She paused, knowing that her words would be heard by billions of enslaved beings across the galaxy. The Empire's greatest weapon has been broken. Their most powerful fleet has been destroyed. The age of Zephyrian rule is ending. To all free peoples of the galaxy, the path to liberation is now open. The Empire can be defeated. Freedom is possible. The message spread across 1,000 worlds, carrying hope to species that had lived under Imperial rule for generations. The human victory at Earth became the signal for a galactic uprising that would reshape the future of civilized space. The Empire had learned too late that there are some species that simply cannot be conquered. 6 months after the destruction of the Annihilation Fleet, Supreme Commander Thexver stood alone in his private chambers on Zephyr Prime. Through the massive window, he could see the capital city burning. Rebel forces had reached the heart of the Empire, and his 3,000-year reign of terror was crumbling around him. The reports on his desk told the story of complete collapse. 400 star systems had declared independence. The Imperial Navy had been reduced to fewer than 200 operational ships. Entire sectors of the galaxy were now controlled by species that had once been slaves. A communication alert sounded. General Caxil's image appeared on the holographic display, his face showing exhaustion and defeat. Supreme Commander, the rebels have taken the outer defense grid. Our remaining forces are requesting permission to surrender. Thexver's 4 fists clenched. Surrender? The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender. Sir, we have lost over 90% of our fleet. The human tactics have been copied by every rebel group in the galaxy. We are fighting an enemy that knows how to turn our own weapons against us. Thexver turned away from the display. Everything had started with one human colony ship. One primitive vessel that should have been destroyed in minutes had become the spark that ignited a galactic revolution. How did this happen? He asked quietly. The humans taught the galaxy something we never wanted them to learn, sir. They showed everyone that the Empire could be defeated. On Earth, Captain Sarah Chun walked through the halls of the newly completed Human Defense Headquarters. The building was filled with representatives from dozens of species that had joined the growing alliance against the Empire. What had started as a desperate fight for survival had become a galactic liberation movement. Dr. Elena Vasquez approached with the latest intelligence reports. Captain, we're receiving surrender offers from Imperial forces in over 50 systems. The Empire's central command structure is breaking down. Chun nodded thoughtfully. The rapid collapse of Imperial power had surprised even the humans. They had expected a long, difficult war. Instead, the Empire was falling apart from within as subject species rose up against their oppressors. Any word from Supreme Commander Thexver? He's still refusing all communication attempts. Our intelligence suggests he's preparing some kind of final strike against Earth. Chun was not surprised. Cornered predators were often at their most dangerous. The Empire's leader would not accept defeat easily. Commander Davis entered the room with urgent news. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting movement in the Zephyr system. It appears the Empire is gathering their remaining ships for one last attack. How many vessels? Approximately 150 ships, including several dreadnoughts that survived the battle at Earth. They're heading directly toward our solar system. Chun considered this information. The Empire's final fleet was still formidable, but it was a fraction of the force that had been defeated 6 months earlier. More importantly, Earth's defenses had been strengthened and expanded since that battle. Estimated time of arrival? 4 days, Captain. Chun activated the planetary communication system. Attention all Earth defense forces and allied vessels. This is Captain Chun. The Empire is making one final attempt to destroy our world. In 4 days, we will face their last remaining fleet. This will be the final battle of the war. Her voice carried to every human settlement and every allied ship in the solar system. The Empire believes that if they can destroy Earth, they can break the spirit of the rebellion. They are wrong. We have already won this war. The galaxy is free and nothing they do can change that. But we will defend our world and show the universe that freedom cannot be destroyed by tyrants. Supreme Commander Thexfer stood on the bridge of his flagship as the remnants of the Imperial fleet approached Earth's solar system. This was all that remained of his mighty empire. 150 ships crewed by soldiers who knew they were probably going to die. Final sensor sweep of the human defenses, he commanded. His tactical officer worked at his station for several minutes before reporting. Sir, the human defensive grid has been significantly expanded since our last attack. We're detecting over 500 orbital platforms and numerous hidden installations throughout the system. Thexfer expected this. The humans had used the past 6 months to strengthen their fortress. But he had not come here to win. He had come here to make a statement. Prepare all weapons for bombardment. Target the planetary population centers. If we cannot defeat the humans, we will at least make them pay a price for their rebellion. The Imperial fleet moved toward Earth in a tight formation. They no longer had the luxury of overwhelming numbers. Every ship would need to fight with desperate courage if they hoped to accomplish anything. As they entered the outer defense perimeter, the hidden human weapons opened fire. Kinetic projectiles and energy beams lanced out from concealed positions, striking the Imperial ships with devastating effect. But this time, the Empire was ready. They had studied the human tactics and developed countermeasures. Their ships moved in unpredictable patterns, making targeting difficult. They used electronic warfare to disrupt human sensors. They sacrificed smaller vessels to protect the larger ones. The battle that followed was brutal and desperate. Imperial ships died under human fire, but they pressed forward with grim determination. For the first time since the war began, the Empire was fighting with the same desperate courage that had made humans so dangerous. Admiral Vextara, commanding one of the surviving dreadnoughts, watched her tactical display as ship after ship disappeared from her formation. She had learned to respect human tactical abilities during their first encounter. Now she was using those lessons against them. All ships, concentrate fire on Grid Section 7, she commanded. Ignore the decoy platforms and target the real weapon emplacements. The Imperial fleet had finally learned to fight like humans. They used deception and misdirection. They turned their weaknesses into strengths. They refused to give up even when facing impossible odds. On Earth, Captain Chun watched the battle from her command center. The Empire's final attack was more effective than their previous attempts. Several orbital platforms had been destroyed, and Imperial ships were getting closer to Earth than ever before. They're learning, Dr. Wright observed. They're using our own tactics against us. Good, Chung replied. It's too late to save their empire, but at least they're fighting with honor. The battle raged for 8 hours. Imperial ships died one by one, but they inflicted heavy damage on Earth's defenses. For a brief moment, it seemed possible that a few Imperial vessels might actually reach the planet's surface. That was when the rest of the galaxy arrived. Ships began dropping out of hyperspace throughout Earth's solar system. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species that had joined the human alliance. They came from every corner of the galaxy. United by their common desire for freedom, the Altarian Defense Fleet arrived first, their sleek ships moving with deadly precision. The vegan colonial navy followed, their massive carriers launching fighters by the thousands. Species that had been enemies for generations now fought side by side against their common oppressor. Supreme Commander Thexfer watched in despair as his final fleet was surrounded by enemies. The humans had not just defeated the Empire militarily. They had united the entire galaxy against Zephyrian rule. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the human commander. Put it through, Thexfer replied. Captain Chun's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Thexfer could see representatives from dozens of different species. The bridge of her ship had become a symbol of galactic unity. Supreme Commander Thexfer, Chun said calmly, your empire is finished. Your remaining ships are outnumbered 50-1. I am offering you one final chance to surrender and spare the lives of your crews. Vexver stared at the human who had destroyed everything he had built. This primitive from an unknown world had accomplished what no enemy in 3,000 years had managed to do. She had broken the Zephyrian Empire. What terms do you offer? He asked quietly. Unconditional surrender of all Imperial forces. All enslaved species will be granted immediate freedom. All Imperial leaders will face trial for their crimes against the galaxy. You and your senior commanders will be imprisoned for life. Vexver considered the offer. He could continue fighting and watch his remaining ships die uselessly. Or he could accept defeat and at least save the lives of his crews. And if I refuse? Then this battle continues until every Imperial ship is destroyed. The choice is yours, Supreme Commander. Vexver looked around his bridge at the officers who had served him faithfully for decades. These soldiers deserved better than a meaningless death in a war that was already lost. I accept your terms, he said finally. All Imperial ships, cease fire and prepare for surrender. The guns fell silent across the solar system. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had officially surrendered. Kamchun stood in the main conference room of Unity Station, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of liberated worlds. The formal treaty ending the war had been signed, and the galaxy was free to determine its own future. Dr. Vasquez approached with a datapad containing the final casualty reports. Captain, the human losses were significant but manageable. 43 orbital platforms destroyed, 12 ships lost, approximately 2,000 casualties. And the Empire? Complete collapse. Supreme Commander Vexver is in custody along with most of the Imperial leadership. The remaining Imperial forces have either surrendered or disbanded. The 3,000-year reign of the Zephyrian Empire is officially over. Chun nodded solemnly. The cost of freedom had been high, but it had been worth paying. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were experiencing liberty for the first time in their lives. Ambassador Kelter of the Altarian Republic, one of the first species to join the Human Alliance, stepped forward to address the assembly. Captain Chun, he said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Liberation Alliance, I want to thank humanity for what you have accomplished. You have given us all a precious gift. You have given us hope. Chun looked around the room at the diverse collection of species that had united to defeat tyranny. Beings who had been enemies for generations now worked together as equals. The galaxy had been transformed by the simple human belief that freedom was worth fighting for. The war is over, she announced to the assembly. But our work is just beginning. We must build a new galaxy based on cooperation instead of conquest. We must ensure that no species ever again faces the choice between slavery and destruction. She paused, thinking about the long journey that had brought them to this moment. It had all started with one colony ship trying to find a new home. Now humanity was part of a galactic community dedicated to peace and freedom. The Empire made one crucial mistake, Chun continued. They believed that fear was stronger than hope. They believed that might made right. They believed that some beings were born to rule while others were born to serve. She smiled as she looked at the representatives of dozens of liberated worlds. They were wrong. Today, we begin a new chapter in galactic history. Today, we prove that freedom is not just a human dream. It is a universal right that belongs to every intelligent being in the galaxy. The applause that followed echoed throughout the station and was broadcast to every world in the former empire. The age of tyranny was over. The age of freedom had begun, and it had all started because one human captain had refused to surrender when an alien fleet demanded submission. The Empire had not listened when the humans offered peace. Now it was too late for the Empire, but not too late for the galaxy to choose a better future.